in point slope form. You should be doing this lesson before you do 4-2. We do these lessons out of order. So we do 4-3 before we do 4-2. Essential question, how do you write an equation in point slope form? So up until this point, you've only learned slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form needed two things to write an equation, a slope and an intercept. In this lesson, you're going to get two things, a point and a slope, and then you're going to be able to write an equation. Our point slope form looks a little long and complicated, but it's not too bad. Our equation is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. M is our slope. X1 and y1 are a coordinate point. So those are the three spots that you replace with numbers. Kind of like in y equals mx plus b, you replaced m and b with numbers. In point slope form, you replace y1, m, and x1 with numbers. So first we're going to practice writing equations in point slope form. I'm going to write down our point slope form equation in the upper right hand corner. This equation is not something you need to memorize, it will be given to you. Okay, so I always start with y minus, and then remember these are my coordinate points. So my y coordinate is 3, so I'm going to put a 3 here, equals m, which is my slope, so 2, parenthesis x minus, and then my x coordinate is 1. So I put a 2 here for my slope, I put a 3 here for my y coordinate, and I put a 1 here for my x coordinate. Let's try the next one. Y minus, this time my y coordinate is 5, equals my slope, which is negative 3, times x minus, now this time my x coordinate is a negative. So I have to do x minus a negative 2, which means that I need to change that into a superplus. Y minus, if it helps you label these, y minus a negative 1 equals my slope, which is 1/2, times x minus, my x coordinate is a negative 4. I always change my minus and negatives to a superplus before moving on to any other steps in a problem. As soon as you see one of those, change it to a plus. Y minus 0 equals negative 2/3 times x minus 6. Y minus a negative 2, change it to a plus, equals 7 times x minus 0. Y minus 8 equals 1 times x minus 9. And y minus a negative 6 superplus equals 3/4 times x minus a negative 7. Oops. Now, I want you to look at all of these equations and notice the relationship between the coordinate point and the equation. So let's pick a random one here. Let's do this one right here. We'll look at a couple of them. We'll look at 2 of them. So this one, my x number is +2. My y is -5. Now look at my coordinate point. So I said my x was +2, but here it's -2. My y was -5, but here it's +5. If you look on the line below, here I have a +4, here I have a -4. Here I have a +1, here I have a -1. So our signs are always the opposite of what they are in our equation. So let's try this slide. Practicing point slope form if I'm given the point slope form but not the point in the slope. Well, the slope part is easy. Let's go do that on all of them. I'm going to circle all of my slopes, so then that's going to make it really easy for me to fill them into my chart. This one looks a little different, so I'm going to hang on that one. And then this one looks a little different, so we'll talk about those at the end. 3, -2, 1/2, 9, and -2/5. Now, if there is no parentheses, it means that there was a 0 in the problem. So this -3x is still your slope, and this x, which is the same as 1x, that's your slope. So we filled all those in. Now remember, our points are the opposite signs that are in our problem. So if my points for my x is a +2, that means my point is a -2. My y is -5, so my point is +5. -8 is a +8. +7 is a -7. -1 is a +1. -3 is a +3. +4 is a -4. Now, if there's nothing here, that means it's a 0. There's nothing here, so it's a 0. -10 is a +10. +11 is a -11. +2 is a -2. -6 is a +6. +12 is a -12. Okay, write an equation in point-slope form for the line, then graph. All right, so now we're going to write it in point-slope form. So y minus, our y coordinate, if you want to label these you can, is 1, equals my slope of 3 times x minus my x coordinate, which is 2. Now this doesn't look like something we're able to graph. We need it to be in slope-intercept form, or mx plus b, in order to be able to graph it. Here's how you get it there. We need to get y alone. So the first thing I do is draw my train tracks, and I'm going to bomb it. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times -2 is -6. Bring down the y minus 1. To get y alone, add 1 to both sides. Y equals, we don't do 3x plus 1 because those aren't like terms, but I can do -6 plus 1, which is -5. This now is my slope-intercept form, and this is something I can graph. So ask yourself, what number do I graph first? My y-intercept, which is -5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I'm going to rise 3, run 1. Rise 3, run 1. There's my line. Point slope form, y minus a -3, so super plus, equals my slope, which is -2, times x minus 1. Draw your train tracks, and then you're going to bomb it to get it in slope-intercept form so we can graph it. -2x, -2 times -1 is +2. Bring down the y plus 3. To get y alone, subtract 3 on both sides. Y equals -2x minus 1. Now it's important to remember that slope-intercept form and point-slope form, they're the same thing, it's just 2 different ways to write it. So if you think about a fraction in a decimal, 1/2 as a fraction is the same as 0.5 as a decimal. Point-slope form is the same as slope-intercept form, it's just 2 different ways to write it. And the key is that we always want a graph in slope-intercept form. You've got to look at what are they giving me. If they give me a point and they give me a slope, put it in point-slope form. If they give me a slope and an intercept, put it in slope-intercept form. If they give me a point and a slope, but they want it in slope-intercept form, put it in point-slope form first, and then distribute. Okay, so let's graph this one. I'm going to put a dot on -1 on my y-axis, then rise 2, rise -2, run 1, rise -2, run 1, rise -2, run 1. Point-slope form, y minus a -5, so superplus, equals 1/2 times x minus a -3, superplus. This time we have to distribute with a fraction, which won't be as bad as it might seem. 1/2 times x, leave that as a fraction. Then if we think of what's 1/2 of 3, well, if I have $3 and I'm going to split it in half, each person would get $1.50, so I'm going to write 1.5. Now to get y alone, I subtract 5 on both sides. Y equals 1/2 x minus 3.5. There is my slope-intercept form. Now I can graph. So go down -3.5 on my y-axis, rise 1, run 2, rise 1, run 2. So you should be in between dots. Last one. Point-slope form, I have a point, I have a slope. Y minus 5 equals -3/2 times x minus a -2, so superplus. Vomit, -3/2x. Now here's how you multiply fractions. -3/2, I'm trying to times it by 2. Well, 2 as a fraction is 2/1, and then I can just multiply across. So -3/2 is -6, or -3 times 2 is -6, 2 times 1 is 2, -6 divided by 2 is -3. Bring down the y minus 5, get y by itself by adding 5 to both sides. Now our equation will be in slope-intercept form, which means I can graph it. -3 plus 5 is 2. So put my dot on 2 on the y-axis, rise -3, run 2, rise -3, run 2. Summary. Your homework for this lesson is pages 233 through 235, numbers 1 through 3, 11 through 16, 40 through 42.